What's going on, folks? Welcome to Kids Today with Dr. Kamal Jones. I am Dr. Kamal Jones. So we have just finished the first week of this Trump 2.0 administration. It has been a busy week, a tough week. There's a bunch to talk about. Of course, we know that there were a ton of executive orders that came out of this White House this past week, cabinet confirmations, a bunch of other policy things. But I want to focus today on one particular executive order that came out of the White House. This one was unfortunately a direct shot at birthright citizenship, and this is super relevant for kids all over our country. So, what happened? On his very first day in office, Donald Trump signed an executive order to target birthright citizenship. What is birthright citizenship? Birthright citizenship essentially says that if you're born in this country, you are a citizen of this country. His order would change the interpretation of this law to say that if a child is born here, but their parent is either undocumented, or if their parent has a lawful documentation but only a temporary status, then that child is not a citizen. So temporary status would be something like a visa for work or for school, something along those lines. And so this order would be applied to any children born 30 days after the order was signed. So that would be newborns beginning sometime around late February. So why is this a big controversy? First off, birthright citizenship has been a hallmark of our nation for 150 years. Through the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And by the way, the 14th Amendment came to be as a direct response to slavery in this nation, where folks tried to say that Black people who were born in this country were not citizens because their parents were enslaved and thus also not citizens. And so the Trump administration is trying to twist this law to create a situation in which potentially hundreds of thousands of children are left without a nation. Imagine you are a refugee, maybe you came from Afghanistan, you have temporary status. When you're here, you get pregnant, you have a child, that child is born here in the United States. If this order were to stand, then that child would not be considered a citizen of the United States. The place where they were quite literally conceived, born, and is the only world that they have ever known. What are you supposed to do in that situation? You likely can't go back to Afghanistan, right? You're here for a reason. You didn't feel safe there. This is the only place that child has ever known. That kid is left effectively stateless. And that's just for the parents who have lawful status. What about the about 250,000 children of undocumented immigrants who are born each year in our nation and are citizens of this country, and by the way, have every right to be here? As it stands now, dozens of states have filed lawsuits contesting this order, and a federal judge in Seattle, who was actually, by the way, a Republican appointed judge, a Ronald Reagan appointed judge, has put a 2-week stop order to allow for more time for briefings. This judge actually said that this was, quote, blatantly unconstitutional, and stated that it boggles his mind. Nonetheless, in this political climate, by all accounts, it is very likely that this will end up elevated to the level of the Supreme Court, a court which has shown itself to be highly conservative and willing to stretch the limits of the law. Perhaps more importantly than that, though, what does it tell us about a president who makes it a day one priority to prevent children who were born in this nation from having the rights and the privileges of citizenship that they so clearly deserve as much as any other American? Citizenship which grants them access to things like healthcare and education, future employment, the right to vote, and a whole host of other benefits and rights of being a citizen of America. This is a targeted shot at the most vulnerable children in our country. So, for next steps, We will be watching closely to see how this plays out in the courts. If your state is not one of the nearly 24 states which has already filed a lawsuit, I recommend you give your governor's office a call and ask why your state is not actively working to fight against a rule that would take the citizenship away from hundreds of thousands of children each year. Okay, my friends, that is our show this week. We will catch you next week on Kids Today, Sundays, 9 a.m. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the notification bell. Also follow us on Instagram, Twitter at Kids Today Media. Take care, guys.